The Prince and the Glowing Gems. The Prince and the Glowing Gems.
Before we begin tonight's gentle journey, please take a moment to check that you are subscribed, so you will never miss the next story. And write in the comments where in the world you are listening from and what time is on your clock. Thank you.
In a land where the moon kissed the tops of ancient towers, and silver rivers wound through valleys like ribbons of light, there lived a young prince named Alaric. His castle stood upon gentle hills that rolled like waves of emerald grass, and from his window he could see forests of oak trees so old they seemed to whisper secrets to the stars. The castle walls were built of smooth gray stone that glowed softly in the moonlight, and ivy climbed them like nature's own tapestry, rustling gently in the evening breeze. Prince Alaric had eyes the color of twilight skies and hair that caught the golden light of sunrise. He was known throughout the realm not for his strength in battle or his skill with sword and shield, but for his gentle heart and his love of all the peaceful wonders that surrounded his home. He spent his days walking through meadows where wildflowers danced in the breeze, listening to the songs of larks and thrushes, and watching the way sunlight filtered through the leaves of the great oak forest that bordered his lands. The castle itself was a place of quiet beauty. Its towers rose like gentle fingers toward the sky, and from their heights one could see for miles across the rolling countryside. Gardens bloomed within the castle, walls filled with roses that perfumed the air and fountains that sang soft melodies as water danced over smooth stones. The corridors were lined with tapestries that depicted scenes of peaceful forests and tranquil lakes, and everywhere there was a sense of calm that seemed to flow from the very stones themselves. But there was something special about Prince Alaric's realm, something that set it apart from all other kingdoms. Hidden throughout the land, nestled in secret places known only to the most observant and gentle souls, were gems that glowed with their own inner light. These were no ordinary jewels, for they pulsed with a soft radiance that seemed to come from the heart of the earth itself. Some glowed with the pale blue of moonbeams on water, others with the warm gold of candlelight, and still others with the gentle green of new leaves in spring. The gems had been there since time began, placed by ancient magic in caves and clearings, beneath the roots of old trees and in the depths of crystal-clear pools. They were said to bring peace to all who found them, filling the heart with tranquility and the mind with gentle dreams. But they revealed themselves only to those who approached with kindness and patience, those who moved through the world with quiet footsteps and hearts full of wonder. Prince Alaric had heard tales of these glowing gems from his grandmother, the old queen, who had told him stories by the fireside when he was just a small boy. She spoke of how the gems sang silent songs that only the peaceful could hear, and how their light could turn even the darkest night into something beautiful and serene. As he grew older, the prince found himself drawn to seek these magical stones, not from greed or ambition, but from a deep longing to experience their gentle magic for himself. And so, on a night when the moon hung full and bright above the castle towers, casting silver light across the countryside, Prince Alaric decided to begin his quest. He donned a simple cloak of deep blue wool and soft leather boots that would make no sound upon the forest floor. He carried no sword or armor, for his journey was one of peace, and he brought with him only a small pack containing bread and honey, a flask of sweet spring water, and a heart full of gentle anticipation. The castle courtyard was bathed in moonlight as the prince stepped outside, and the night air was cool and fresh, carried with it the scent of night-blooming jasmine and the distant fragrance of the oak forest. The cobblestones beneath his feet gleamed like stars, and somewhere in the darkness a nightingale sang, a song so beautiful it seemed to welcome him on his journey. Prince Alaric walked slowly through the castle gates and down the winding path that led from his home into the countryside beyond. The path was bordered by ancient stone walls covered in soft moss that glowed faintly in the moonlight, and overhead, the branches of old elm trees created a canopy of shifting shadows and silver light. His footsteps were silent on the packed earth, and the only sounds were the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant murmur of the silver river that wound through the valley below. As he walked, the prince felt a deep sense of peace settling over him like a warm blanket. The night was alive with gentle magic. Fireflies danced in the hedgerows like tiny fallen stars, and the air shimmered with the soft luminescence of dewdrops catching the moonlight. Every breath he took filled his lungs with the sweet, clean scent of the countryside, and every step carried him deeper into a world where time seemed to move more slowly and peace reigned supreme. The path wound down through rolling meadows where sheep slept peacefully under the stars, their wool glowing softly in the moonlight like patches of clouds that had fallen to earth. The grass was soft and cool beneath the prince's feet, and here and there, wildflowers closed their petals for the night, waiting for the sun's return to open them once again. The gentle sound of the river grew stronger as he walked, and soon he could see its waters gleaming like liquid silver in the distance. When Prince Alaric reached the river's edge, he paused to drink in the beauty of the scene before him. The water flowed gently over smooth stones, creating a soft murmuring sound that was like a lullaby, sung by the earth itself. Willows trailed their branches in the current, their leaves creating patterns of light and shadow on the water's surface, and somewhere in the reeds, a family of swans glided silently there, white feathers glowing like snow in the moonlight. The prince knelt by the water's edge and cupped some cool, clear liquid in his hands, drinking deeply of its sweetness. The water tasted of mountain springs and morning mist, and it filled him with renewed energy for his journey. As he stood to continue on his way, he noticed something magical happening. Tiny lights began to dance across the water's surface, like reflections of stars that had decided to play in the gentle current. Following the river's meandering path, Prince Alaric walked through a landscape that seemed painted by the dreams of angels. The water sang its soft song as it flowed over stones worn smooth by countless years of gentle caressing, and the banks were lined with flowers that glowed faintly in the darkness. Moonflowers and night-blooming cereus that opened their petals only in the magical hours between sunset and dawn. The air grew cooler and more fragrant as the prince walked deeper into the countryside, leaving the familiar lands around his castle behind and venturing into territories he had never explored. But he felt no fear, only a growing sense of wonder and anticipation. The night seemed to wrap around him like a protective cloak, and every shadow held the promise of discovery. Every rustle in the bushes the whisper of adventure. As the river curved away toward distant hills, Prince Alaric found himself at the edge of the great oak forest that he had seen so many times from his castle windows. Up close, the trees were even more magnificent than he had imagined. Their trunks were massive, wider than the span of a man's arms, and their bark was deeply grooved with the wisdom of centuries. The canopy overhead was so thick that the Moonlight filtered down in scattered beams, creating pools of silver light on the forest floor. The prince paused at the forest's edge, feeling the ancient magic that dwelt within. The air was thick with the scent of moss and old wood, and somewhere in the depths of the forest, an owl called softly to its mate. The sound echoed to the trees like a gentle greeting, and Prince Alaric felt welcomed into this realm of natural wonder. He stepped beneath the first of the great oaks, and immediately the world around him changed. The sound of the outside world, the distant murmur of the river, the whisper of wind across the meadows, faded away, replaced by the deeper, more primal sounds of the forest. His footsteps made no sound on the thick carpet of leaves that covered the forest floor, leaves that had fallen from the branches over countless autumns and now formed a soft, fragrant cushion beneath his feet. The trees seemed to close ranks behind him as he walked deeper into the forest, but Prince Alaric felt no sense of being trapped. Instead, he felt embraced by the gentle giants, protected by their ancient strength and wisdom. Patches of moonlight dappled the ground before him, creating a natural pathway through the woodland, and he followed it with the trust of one who knows he is exactly where he is meant to be. As he walked, the prince began to notice subtle signs that he was entering a realm touched by magic. The moss on the tree trunks glowed with a faint phosphorescence, creating patterns of light that seemed to shift and dance as he watched. Tiny mushrooms growing at the base of the oaks pulsed with their own inner radiance, and here and there, spider webs stretched between the branches, beaded with dewdrops that sparkled like diamonds in the filtered moonlight. The deeper he ventured into the forest, the more magical it became. Streams of silver light seemed to flow between the trees like rivers of liquid moonbeams, and the very air shimmered with an otherworldly quality that made everything appear soft and dreamlike. The prince felt as though he had stepped into a fairy tale, a place where the ordinary rules of the world no longer applied, and wonder waited around every bend in the path. After walking for what seemed like hours but felt like mere moments, Prince Alaric came upon a clearing where the moonlight fell full and bright, illuminating a circle of grass so perfect it might have been crafted by the hands of angels. In the center of the clearing stood a single tree, smaller than the great oaks but no less beautiful, its branches spreading wide to create a natural canopy overhead. The tree's leaves rustled softly in the gentle breeze, and its bark seemed to glow with the same phosphorescent light as the moss throughout the forest. But what drew the prince's attention was not the tree itself, but what lay beneath it. There, nestled among the roots like a treasure left by the earth itself, was a gem that glowed with the soft, steady light of a star. It was no larger than a robin's egg, perfectly round and smooth, and it pulsed with gentle blue radiance that seemed to breathe with the rhythm of the forest itself. Prince Alaric approached the glowing gem with reverence, moving slowly and quietly so as not to disturb the magical tranquility of the clearing. As he drew closer, he could see that the gem was not simply blue, but contained within it all the colors of twilight, the deep indigo of the night sky, the silver of moonlight on water, and the pale lavender of dawn approaching on the horizon. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen, and its gentle light filled his heart with a peace so profound it brought tears to his eyes. He knelt beside the tree and reached out with trembling fingers to touch the gem. The moment his skin made contact with smooth surface, a wave of tranquility washed over him like warm water. The gem was neither hot nor cold, but perfectly neutral, as if it existed at the exact temperature of comfort itself. As He lifted it from its resting place among the roots. The gem's light grew slightly brighter, as if responding to his gentle touch. Holding the glowing gem in his cupped palms, Prince Alaric felt a deep connection to the earth and all its creatures. He could sense the slow, steady heartbeat of the great oaks, the quick flutter of small birds sleeping in their nests, and the gentle movement of deer bedding down for the night in hidden glades throughout the forest. The gem seemed to be a conduit for all the peace and harmony that existed in the natural world, and through it, the prince felt himself becoming part of that greater tapestry of life. As he sat beneath the tree, cradling the first of the glowing gems he had sought, Prince Alaric understood that his quest was about more than simply collecting beautiful objects. Each gem was a key that unlocked a deeper understanding of the world around him, a way of connecting with the ancient magic that flowed through all living things. The gem in his hands pulsed with the rhythm of his own heartbeat, and he knew that it would always remind him of this moment of perfect peace in the heart of the enchanted forest. But even as he treasured this first discovery, the prince felt a gentle pull drawing onward. There were other gems waiting to be found, other places of magic and wonder to explore. The forest itself seemed to whisper encouragement, and the gem in his hands grew warm with approval. With great care, he wrapped the precious stone in a piece of soft cloth and placed it safely in his pack, then rose to continue his journey. The moonlight filtering through the canopy seemed to form a path leading deeper into the forest, and Prince Alaric followed it with the easy confidence of one who trusts in the guidance of magic. The trees grew larger and more ancient as he walked, their trunks so massive that they seemed like pillars holding up the sky itself. The air grew cooler and more fragrant, filled with the scent of night-blooming flowers and the rich earthiness of deep woodland. As he walked, the prince began to hear a new sound, the gentle trickle of water flowing over stones. The sound grew stronger as he moved forward, and soon he came upon a small stream that wound its way between the great tree trunks like a ribbon of liquid silver. The water was so clear that he could see every pebble on the bottom, and it caught and reflected the moonlight in patterns that danced and shimmered as it flowed. Following the stream deeper into the forest, Prince Alaric felt his excitement growing. The air around the water seemed charged with magic, and he sensed that he was approaching another place of special significance. The trees along the stream's banks were draped with hanging moss that glowed faintly in the darkness, creating curtains of soft light that parted as he passed. The stream led him to a place where the forest opened up again, not into a clearing this time, but into a natural amphitheater formed by a circle of the largest oaks he had yet seen. In the center of this sacred space, the stream pooled into a small pond so perfectly round and still that it looked like a mirror placed there by the gods. The water was dark and mysterious, reflecting the stars above so perfectly that it was impossible to tell where reality ended and reflection began. But what made the prince catch his breath in wonder was not the pond itself, but what lay within it. Just beneath the surface, resting on a bed of smooth white stones, were 3 more gems, each glowing with its own unique light. One pulsed with the warm gold of candle flames, another with the soft green of new leaves in springtime, and the third with the pure white radiance of fresh snow under starlight. The gems lay in the shallow water near the pond's edge, and their combined light created patterns of color that danced across the surface like aurora borealis captured in miniature. The water around them seemed to shimmer with their reflected radiance, and small fish with scales that caught the light swam, lazy circles around the precious stones, as if they too were drawn to the magic contained within them. Prince Alaric stood at the edge of the pond, mesmerized by the beauty of the scene. The night was so quiet that he could hear the tiny sound of the gems themselves, a soft, musical humming that seemed to resonate with the very atoms of the air. It was a sound like crystal bells heard from a great distance, or the singing of angels so far away that only the heart could detect their melody. Removing his boots and rolling up the legs of his trousers, the prince waded slowly into the warm water of the pond. The bottom was soft sand mixed with those same smooth white stones, and it felt like walking on clouds beneath his feet. The water barely reached his ankles, but each step sent ripples across the surface that caught and scattered the gems' light in new and beautiful patterns. As he reached the first gem, the one that glowed with golden light, Prince Alaric felt the same wave of tranquility that had washed over him in the clearing. But this gem's magic was different from the first. Where the blue gem had connected him to the peaceful rhythm of the forest, this golden one filled him with warmth and contentment, like sitting before a fireplace on a winter evening with loved ones nearby. It was a gem of home and hearth, of safety and comfort, and as he lifted it from his watery bed, the prince felt as though he were being embraced by every good memory he had ever known. The second gem, the one that glowed with spring green light, brought with it the fresh energy of new beginnings. As his fingers closed around its smooth surface, Prince Alaric felt the joy of seeds sprouting in dark earth, of leaves unfurling toward the sun, of young animals taking their first steps into the world. It was a gem of growth and renewal, of hope and endless possibility, and it filled his heart with the certainty that no matter how dark the night might seem, morning would always come. The third and final gem in the pond was perhaps the most magical of all. Its pure white light seemed to contain within it all the colors that existed, and yet none of them, like light itself before it is broken apart by a prism. When Prince Alaric lifted this gem from the water, he felt a profound sense of clarity wash over him. All the worries and uncertainties that had ever clouded his mind seemed to dissolve, replaced by a crystal clear understanding of his place in the world and his connection to all living things. Standing in a gentle pond with the three new gems cupped in his hands, surrounded by the ancient oaks and the soft magic of the forest night, Prince Alaric felt more at peace than he had ever felt in his entire life. The gems' combined light created a soft aura around him, and he could see his reflection in the still water, not just his physical form, but something deeper, something that glowed with the same gentle radiance as the magical stones he had found. Carefully, reverently, he wrapped each gem in its own piece of soft cloth and placed them in his pack. Alongside the first blue gem he had discovered, the weight of them was negligible, but their presence filled him with such contentment that he felt as though he could carry them forever without growing tired. The very air around him seemed to shimmer with their contained light, and even through the protective cloth, their gentle radiance continued to fill the night with magic. As he waded back to the edge of the pond and put on his boots, Prince Alaric felt the gentle pull of his quest drawing him onward once again. For gems now rested safely in his pack, but he sensed that his journey was far from over. The forest seemed to whisper of other treasures waiting to be discovered, other places where magic dwelt in hidden corners of the world. The stream that had led him to this magical pond continued on through the forest, winding deeper into the ancient woodland, and the prince decided to follow it further. The water sang its soft song as it flowed over stones and around fallen logs, and its gentle voice seemed to be calling him toward his next destination. As he walked beside the stream, the character of the forest began to change once again. The great oaks gradually gave way to other trees, graceful birches with bark that gleamed like silver in the moonlight, and tall pines whose needles whispered secrets to the night wind. The air grew cooler and fresher, carrying with it the scent of mountain streams and distant snow-capped peaks. The stream began to move more quickly, tumbling over small rocks and creating tiny waterfalls that caught the moonlight and threw it back in sparkling cascades. The sound of the flowing water grew from a gentle murmur to a more musical babbling, like the laughter of children at play. Prince Alaric found the sound deeply soothing, and it seemed to match the rhythm of his own footsteps as he followed the water's winding path. After walking for what seemed like hours through this changing landscape, the prince began to notice that the trees were growing thinner and the canopy above him less dense. More moonlight filtered down through the branches, and he could sense that he was approaching the edge of the great forest. The stream he'd been following rushed more quickly now, eager to reach its destination, and its voice had become a song of anticipation and joy. Finally, the trees parted to reveal a sight that took Prince Alaric's breath away. Before him lay a lake so vast and perfect that it might have been crafted by the gods themselves as a mirror for the stars. The water was dark and still, reflecting the full moon with such clarity that it seemed there were two moons in the world, one above and one below. The shores of the lake were white sand that glowed softly in the starlight, and here and there, cattails and water lilies decorated the water's edge with their quiet beauty. But what made the lake truly magical were the gems. Prince Alaric could see them glowing beneath the surface like fallen stars that had chosen to make their home in the depths of the water. There were dozens of them, each one pulsing with its own unique light. Some deep blue like ocean depths, others warm amber like captured sunlight, and still others the soft pink of rose petals or the pale yellow of morning mist. The gems lay scattered across the lake bottom at various depths, creating an underwater constellation that was more beautiful than any night sky the prince had ever seen. Their combined light made the entire lake glow with a soft, otherworldly radiance, and the water itself seemed to pulse gently with their collective heartbeat. At the lake's edge, Prince Alaric knelt on the soft sand and gazed out over the magical waters. The night was so quiet that he could hear the tiny sound of wavelets lapping against the shore, and somewhere in the distance, a loon called across the water with a voice so hauntingly beautiful that it brought tears to his eyes. The air was filled with the scent of water lilies and the clean, fresh smell of the lake itself. But even as he marveled at the beauty before him, the prince wondered how he would be able to reach the gems that lay beneath the water's surface. The lake was clearly deep, and he was not skilled at diving to great depths. As if sensing his dilemma, the water near the shore began to shimmer and dance, and from its depths emerged the most beautiful creature he had ever seen. It was a swan, but not an ordinary swan. Its feathers were pure white and seemed to glow with their own inner light, like snow that had been touched by starfire. Its neck was long and graceful, and its eyes held an intelligence and kindness that spoke of ancient wisdom. As it glided toward the shore where the prince knelt, the water around it sparkled with tiny points of light, as if the very lake were celebrating its presence. The swan came to rest in the shallow water, just a few feet from where Prince Alaric knelt, and it regarded him with those wise, gentle eyes without words, but with a communication that went deeper than speech. The swan seemed to understand why he had come to this magical place. It nodded its graceful head once, as if in greeting, and then began to sing. The swan song was unlike anything the prince had ever heard. It was not the harsh call of ordinary waterfowl, but melodies so pure and beautiful that it seemed to be woven from moonlight and dreams. The notes rose and fell like gentle waves, carrying with them all the peace and tranquility of the lake itself. As the swan sang, the water around began to glow more brightly, and Prince Alaric could see the gems on the lake bottom responding to the magical music, their own light pulsing in harmony with the melody. One by one, as the swan continued its ethereal song, the gems began to rise from the depths of the lake. They floated upward through the dark water, like bubbles of light, moving slowly and gracefully toward the surface. The prince watched in wonder as a dozen, then 2 dozen, then 3 dozen precious stones drifted upward, each one glowing with its own unique radiance. When the gems reached the surface of the lake, they did not sink back down, but instead floated on the water like lily pads made of light. They drifted slowly toward the shore where Prince Alaric waited, guided by the current and the gentle influence of the swan song. The water around them sparkled and danced with reflected light, creating patterns of beauty that shifted and changed with every gentle movement of the lake's surface. As the floating gems drew near, the prince could see each one clearly. There were sapphires that glowed with the deep blue of twilight skies, emeralds that pulsed with the green of deep forest glades, rubies that burned with the warm red of hearth fires, and diamonds that sparkled with the pure white light of stars. But there were also gems he had never seen before, stones that glowed with colors that seemed to exist only in dreams, shades of purple and gold and silver that had no names in the waking world. With infinite care and reverence, Prince Alaric reached out to gather the floating gems. Each one felt warm and alive in his hands, pulsing with its own heartbeat and filling him with a different aspect of peace and wonder. The sapphires brought in the calm of deep meditation, the emeralds the tranquility of growing things, the rubies the comfort of love and companionship. The diamonds filled him with clarity and understanding, while the nameless dream-colored stones brought emotions so subtle and beautiful that he had no words to describe them. As he collected each gem and wrapped it carefully in soft cloth, the swan continued its magical song, its voice weaving a lullaby that seemed to bless both the stones and the prince who had come to claim them. The lake itself seemed to pulse with contentment, its waters growing calmer and more mirror-like with each gem that was safely gathered. When the last of the floating gems had been collected and placed safely in his pack, Prince Alaric looked up to thank the swan for its incredible gift. But the magnificent creature was already gliding away across the lake, its white form growing smaller and smaller until it disappeared into the mists that were beginning to rise from the water's surface. Its song continued to echo across the lake long after it had vanished, a melody of blessing and farewell that filled the prince's heart with gratitude. The pack on his back now held more than 40 of the magical glowing gems, but their weight was no burden. Instead, they seemed to make him lighter, as if their collective magic was lifting his spirit and filling his very soul with their gentle radiance. Even wrapped in cloth and hidden from sight, their presence was unmistakable, a warm, comforting weight that pulsed with life and light. As Prince Alaric stood on the shore of the magical lake, he felt the familiar pull of his quest drawing him onward once again. The night was growing deeper, but he felt no tiredness. The gems he carried seemed to fill him with their own energy, a gentle vitality that could sustain him through any journey. The lake stretched away into the mist, beautiful and serene, but he knew that other wonders awaited him in the darkness beyond. Following the shoreline, the prince began to walk around the edge of the lake, his feet silent on the soft, white sand. The water lapped gently at the shore beside him, and the sound was like a whispered lullaby that accompanied his steps. Above, the stars reflected perfectly in the still water, creating the illusion that he was walking between two infinite skies. As he rounded a curve in the shoreline, Prince Alaric saw before him a sight that made him pause in wonder. Rising from the far end of the lake was a hill that seemed to glow with its own inner light. It was not tall, barely rising above the treetops, but it was perfectly shaped, a gentle dome covered with soft grass that sparkled in the moonlight like a carpet woven from starbeams. The hill called to him with a voice that spoke not to his ears but to his heart, promising mysteries and wonders beyond anything he had yet discovered. A path wound up its gentle slope, marked not by stones or posts, but by flowers that glowed with their own soft phosphorescence, night blooming cereus, and moonflowers that opened their petals only in the magical hours of deepest night. Prince Alaric left the shore of the lake and began to climb the luminous hill, following the path of glowing flowers. Each step took him higher above the surrounding countryside, and as he climbed, he could see the landscape spread out below him like a tapestry woven from moonlight and shadow. The lake stretched away into the darkness, its surface mirror smooth and dotted with the gentle light of water. Lilies, the great forest beyond, looked like a sea of silver-touched treetops, and in the far distance he could just make out the towers of his own castle, tiny and perfect like something from a fairy tale. But as beautiful as the view was, Prince Alaric found his attention drawn upward toward the summit of the glowing hill. There, silhouetted against the star-filled sky, stood a single tree unlike any he had ever seen. It was not tall, but it was ancient beyond measure, its trunk gnarled and twisted with the wisdom of countless centuries. Its branches spread wide like embracing arms, and from every twig and leaf came a soft, steady light that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the earth itself. As he drew closer to the tree, the prince could see that it was heavy with fruit, not apples or pears or any ordinary fruit, but gems that grew like living things from the branches themselves. They hung in clusters, like grapes, each one perfect and smooth and glowing with its own inner fire. There were more gems growing on this single tree than he had collected in all his wanderings through forest and lake, and their combined radiance turned the hilltop into a place of such beauty that it seemed to exist outside of time itself. The tree's light created a circle of soft radiance that extended for many yards in all directions, and within this circle, the very air seemed to shimmer with magic. The grass beneath the tree was softer than velvet and seemed to glow from within, each blade a tiny wand of captured starlight. Flowers grew in perfect spirals around the tree's base, roses that bloomed in colors that had no names, their petals transparent, like colored glass, and their fragrance like distilled moonbeams. Prince Alaric approached the miraculous tree with steps slowed by reverence and wonder. As he drew near, he could hear the gems singing, a chorus of crystal voices that rose and fell in harmony so beautiful they seemed to be the very music of creation itself. Each gem sang in its own voice, but Together they created a symphony that spoke of all the joy and peace and beauty that existed in the world. Standing beneath the branches of the glowing tree, bathed in its gentle radiance, Prince Alaric felt a profound transformation taking place within his heart. All the gems he had collected on his journey, from the first blue stone in the forest clearing to the dozens he had gathered from a magical lake, seemed to resonate with the song of the tree, creating within him a harmony so perfect that tears of joy streamed down his cheeks. He understood now that his quest had never really been about collecting the gems themselves. Each glowing stone was a lesson in peace, a teacher tranquility, a guide toward the deeper understanding of the gentle magic that flowed through all living things. The gems were not treasures to be hoarded, but gifts to be cherished and shared, sources of light and comfort that could bring peace to any heart that was open to receive them. As if responding to this realization, the tree began to glow more brightly, and its song grew sweeter and more beautiful. The gems hanging from its branches pulsed with increased radiance, and several of them began to detach themselves from their twigs, floating gently downward to rest in the soft grass at the prince's feet. These final gems are the most beautiful of all, stones that seem to contain within them all the colors of sunset and sunrise, all the hues of rainbow and aurora, all the gentle light of stars and moon and sun. They were warm to the touch and seemed to pulse with the very heartbeat of the earth. And as Prince Alaric gathered them with trembling hands, he felt his quest reaching its completion. But even as he collected these final, most precious gems, the prince felt no sense of ending, but rather of beginning. The magic he had discovered on his journey was not something that could be contained or completed. It was a living thing that would continue to grow and spread, touching every life it encountered with its gentle power. The night was growing toward its deepest hour, but Prince Alaric felt no weariness. The gems he now carried, more than 50 of them, each one unique and precious, filled with an energy that seemed to come from the very source of all peaceful magic. Their combined light created an aura around him that turned the darkness into something beautiful and welcoming, a gentle radiance that extended outward like ripples on still water. From the summit of the glowing hill, the prince could see the path his return journey would take. The lake lay spread below him like a mirror for the stars, and beyond it, the great forest stretched away toward his distant castle. But now the landscape looked different to his gem-touched eyes. Everywhere he looked, he could see the soft glow of magic, the gentle light that connected all living things in an invisible web of peace and harmony. As he began his descent from the magical hill, Prince Alaric felt the EMS in his pack responding to his movement, their light pulsing gently with each step he took. The tree behind him continued its crystal song, a melody of blessing and farewell that seemed to follow him as he made his way back toward the lake shore. The return journey was different from his outward quest, though he followed the same path through the same magical landscape. Now he moved not as a seeker, but as a carrier of light, someone who had been transformed by his encounter with the ancient magic of the glowing gems. The very air around him shimmered with their contained radiance, and everywhere he passed, flowers seemed to bloom more brightly and night birds sang more sweetly. At the lake's shore, the white sand glowed softly beneath his feet, and the water reflected not just the moon and stars, but also the gentle aura of light that surrounded him. The magical swan was nowhere to be seen, but Prince Alaric felt its presence blessing his journey, and he paused for a moment to send a thought of gratitude across the mirror-smooth water. As he entered the great forest once again, the trees seemed to recognize him, as a friend and ally. There, branches rustled in welcome, and the phosphorescent moss on their trunks glowed more brightly as he passed. The stream that had guided him on his outward journey now sang beside him as he retraced his steps, its voice harmonizing with the crystal song of the gems he carried. In the clearing where he had found his first gem, the single tree still stood in its circle of moonlit grass. But now the prince could see that it was not alone. Other trees throughout the forest glowed with their own gentle light, creating a constellation of living lanterns that stretched away into the depths of the woodland. His quest had opened his eyes to magic that had always been there, waiting for someone with the heart to recognize it. The journey back through the forest seemed to pass in moments, though the prince knew that hours must be flowing by. Time itself seemed different now, less urgent and more gentle, flowing like honey, rather than rushing like a river. The gems in his pack pulsed with the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, and their combined song created a lullaby that made even the deepest night feel safe and welcoming. As Prince Alaric emerged from a forest embrace, he found himself once again beside the silver river that wound through the valley toward his home. The water caught the light of the gems he carried, creating patterns of color that danced on its surface like liquid rainbows. The willows along the banks seemed to sway in greeting, their trailing branches creating gentle curtains that parted as he passed. The meadows beyond the river were bathed in the soft light of approaching dawn, though the sky was still dark with night. The prince realized that the glow came not from the sun, but from his own transformed presence. The gems he carried had awakened something within him that turned darkness into gentle illumination wherever he walked. Sheep in the distant fields looked up as he passed, their eyes reflecting his soft radiance, and they seemed to settle into deeper, more peaceful sleep as his influence washed over them. The path that led back to his castle was transformed by his new vision, where before he had seen only familiar countryside. Now he could perceive the intricate web of magic that connected all living things. Every blade of grass pulsed with its own tiny light. Every flower glowed with the gentle fire of life itself, and the very stones beneath his feet seemed to hum with ancient songs of earth and sky. As he climbed the gentle hill toward his home, Prince Alaric could see that his castle too had been touched by magic. The gray stones of his walls seemed to glow with a warm inner light, and the ivy that climbed them sparkled with dewdrops that caught and reflected the radiance he carried. The towers rose like candles against the star-filled sky, and from their windows came a soft luminescence that spoke of peace and contentment within. The castle courtyard was empty and quiet as the prince passed through its gates, but he felt the presence of all who dwelt within, guards and servants, nobles and common folk, all sleeping peacefully under the protection of the ancient walls. Their dreams seemed to reach out to him, touched and blessed by the magic he carried, becoming sweeter and more restful as his influence spread throughout the castle like ripples in still water. Prince Alaric climbed the winding stairs to his chambers in the highest tower, his footsteps silent on the worn stone steps. The gems in his pack seemed to grow lighter with each step, as if they were eager to reach their final destination. Their combined song had become softer now, a gentle humming that seemed to resonate with the very stones of the castle itself. In his chambers, the prince carefully unpacked each of the magical gems he had collected on his journey. One by one, he unwrapped them from their protective cloths and placed them on a table beside his window where they could catch the first light of dawn. As he revealed each glowing stone, the room filled with his particular radiance. the deep blue of forest tranquility, the warm gold of hearth and home, the spring green of new beginnings, the pure white of clarity and understanding. The gems from the lake added their own voices to the chorus. Sapphires singing of deep meditation, emeralds whispering of growing things, rubies glowing with the warmth of love and companionship. The diamond stones sparkled with the clarity of mountain streams, while the dream-colored gems pulsed, with emotions too subtle and beautiful for words. But it was the final gems from the magical tree that transformed the chamber into something truly extraordinary. As Prince Alaric placed them among their companions, their sunset and sunrise colors began to blend and merge, creating patterns of light that moved across the walls like living tapestries. The very air in the room began to shimmer with their collective radiance, and the prince felt as though he were standing within a star that had chosen to make its home on Earth. As the first pale light of dawn began to appear on the eastern horizon, the gems seemed to recognize the approaching day, and their song grew softer, more peaceful, like a lullaby sung by the earth itself. The prince understood that they were preparing to rest, their active magic settling into a gentle, steady glow that would comfort and bless all who came near them throughout the day. Prince Alaric stood at his window, looking out over his transformed realm. The countryside that stretched below him was bathed in the gentle light of dawn, but now he could see the magic that had always been there, the soft glow of growing things, the shimmer of morning dew on spider webs, the dance of fireflies settling into sleep as the day creatures began to wake. His journey had not changed the world, but it had changed his ability to perceive the wonder that surrounded him always. The gems behind him pulsed with contentment, their mission complete. They had taught him the lessons they were meant to teach, that peace could be found in the deepest forest and the stillest lake, that magic lived in the hearts of all gentle creatures, and that the greatest treasures were those that brought tranquility and wonder to the soul. They would remain with him always, not as possessions to be guarded, but as friends and companions whose presence would remind him daily of the profound peace that dwelt at the heart of all creation. As the sun rose higher, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Prince Alaric felt a deep satisfaction settle over him like a warm blanket. His quest was complete, but in another sense, it was just beginning. Every day would bring new opportunities to see the magic in ordinary things, to find the gems of wonder, hidden in moments of quiet beauty, to share the peace he had discovered with all who crossed his path. The gems grew quieter as the daylight strengthened, their active magic settling into a gentle, steady radiance that would comfort and protect throughout the hours of sun and activity. But as night fell again, they would awaken to their full power, filling his chambers with their soft light and their crystal songs, reminding him always of the magical journey that had transformed his heart. And so Prince Alaric settled into his chair beside the window, watching the sun climb higher into the morning sky. The gems glowed softly on the table beside him, their light barely visible now in the growing daylight, but their presence unmistakable in the peace that filled his heart. He knew that when darkness fell again, they would blaze forth in all their glory, turning his chambers into a place of magic and wonder. But for now, as the morning advanced and his realm awakened to another day of quiet beauty, the prince was content to sit in the gentle glow of his treasures, remembering the magical night when he had walked through enchanted forests and discovered lakes filled with floating stars. The memory of his journey would remain with him always, a source of strength and peace that no external force could ever diminish. The people of his realm would benefit from his transformation, though they might never know its source. His rule would be gentler, his judgment wiser, his heart more open to the needs of all living things. The magic of the gems would flow through him into everything he touched, spreading peace and tranquility, like ripples in still water, blessing all who came within the influence of his transformed presence. As the morning sun climbed higher, Prince Alaric felt his eyelids growing heavy with the gentle tiredness that comes after a night of profound discovery. The gem seemed to sense his need for rest, and their already soft glow grew even more peaceful, creating a lullaby of light that invited him to sleep. He rose from his chair and moved to his bed, where the covers seemed to welcome him with unusual softness and warmth. As he settled into sleep, the prince felt the gem's magic wrapping around him like a cocoon of peace. Their gentle light created patterns behind his closed eyelids, memories of moonlit forests and mirror still lakes, of glowing trees and singing swans, of all the wonders he discovered on his magical journey. These images would visit his dreams, carrying him back to those places of power and tranquility whenever he needed to find peace in his heart. The gems continued their soft singing as he slept, their crystal voices weaving a tapestry of sound that blessed not only the prince but everyone in the castle. Guards at their posts found their vigilance more peaceful. Servants went about their duties with lighter hearts, and throughout the realm, all who dwelt within the influence of the magical stones found their lives touched by an indefinable sense of well-being and contentment. And so the hours of daylight passed, with Prince Alaric sleeping peacefully in his tower chamber while his magical gems kept their gentle watch. The stones had found their home at last, in the heart of one who understood their true purpose, not to dazzle with their beauty or to serve as symbols of wealth and power, but to be sources of peace and tranquility in a world that thirsted for such gifts. As afternoon mellowed into evening and the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, the gems began to glow more brightly once again. Their morning rest was ending, and they prepared to welcome another night with their full radiance and song. Prince Alaric stirred in his sleep, sensing their awakening, and a smile crossed his peaceful features as he felt their familiar presence strengthening around him. When darkness finally claimed the sky and the first stars appeared overhead, the gems burst forth in all their glory, filling the prince's chambers with light and music that seemed to come from the very heart of creation itself. Prince Alaric awakened to their song, refreshed and renewed, ready to begin another day, blessed by their gentle magic. He rose from his bed and went to the window, looking out over his moonlit realm with eyes that could now perceive the magic that dwelt in every shadow and every beam of silver light. The gems behind him pulsed with contentment, their quest complete, their purpose fulfilled. They had found their perfect home, in the heart of one who understood that the greatest treasures are those that bring peace to the soul and wonder to the spirit. From that night forward, Prince Alaric's chambers became a place of pilgrimage for all who sought peace and tranquility. Visitors would come from far and wide, drawn by rumors of the magical gems that glowed in the highest tower of the castle. They would climb the winding stairs with hearts full of hope and leave with souls touched by the profound peace that radiated from the precious stones. The gems welcomed each visitor with their gentle light and crystal song, sharing their magic freely with all who came with sincere hearts. Troubled souls found comfort, weary spirits discovered rest, and those who sought understanding received the gift of clarity. The stones asked for nothing in return except that their visitors carry some measure of their peace back into the world, spreading tranquility like seeds scattered on fertile ground. And so the magical gems that Prince Alaric had discovered in his night of wonder became beacons of peace for his entire realm and beyond. Their light shone forth from the castle tower like a lighthouse for the soul, guiding all who sought them to profound tranquility that dwelt the heart of the gentle. Magic they contained. Years passed, and Prince Alaric aged with grace and wisdom, his heart forever young thanks to the magic of his treasured gems. The stones never lost their power, never dimmed their light, never ceased their crystal singing. They remained as beautiful and potent as they had been on the night he first discovered them, eternal sources of peace and wonder in a world that would always hunger for such gifts. When visitors asked the prince about his legendary gems, he would tell them of his magical journey through moonlit forests and across mirror-still lakes, of the singing swan and the glowing tree, of all the wonders he had encountered in his quest for peace. But he would always end his tale with the same gentle wisdom. The gems had not made him peaceful. They had simply awakened the peace that already dwelt within his heart, waiting to be discovered like treasure hidden in the depths of his own soul. And in the quiet hours before dawn, when the gems sang their softest lullabies and their light was most gentle and serene, Prince Alaric would sit beside them and remember the magical night when his life had been forever transformed. He would close his eyes and let their peaceful radiance carry him back to those moments of perfect tranquility, feeling once again a profound connection to all living things that the gems had revealed to him. The stones would pulse with their steady heartbeat, their glow as warm and comforting as a mother's embrace, their song as soothing as the whisper wind through leaves. And in their presence, Prince Alaric would find himself filled with the same sense of wonder and peace that had first awakened in his heart on that magical night of discovery, when he had learned that the greatest treasures are not gold or silver, but the gentle gems of tranquility that illuminate the darkness and sing lullabies to weary souls. As the first light of each new dawn touched the eastern horizon, the gems would settle into their daytime rest, their active magic transforming into a gentle, steady presence that blessed all who came near. And Prince Alaric would prepare for another day of sharing their gifts with his people, carrying their peace into every corner of his realm like sunlight dispelling shadow, like gentle rain bringing life to thirsting earth. The story of Prince Alaric and his glowing gems became legend throughout the land, passed down from parent to child like a precious inheritance. But those who were wise understood that the tale was more than mere story. It was an invitation to seek the gems of peace within their own hearts, to discover the magic that waited in quiet moments in gentle places, to find the tranquility that could transform any life with its radiant blessing. And so the prince lived on, surrounded by his magical treasures, sharing their gifts with all who sought them, and knowing that as long as the gems continued to glow with their eternal light, peace and wonder would never be entirely lost from the world. Their gentle radiance would shine forever, a beacon of hope for all who yearn for tranquility, a reminder that magic dwells not in distant lands but in the quiet corners of every heart that is open to receive it. In the deepest hours of night, when the gems sang their sweetest songs and their light was most pure and beautiful, Prince Alaric would sometimes feel as though he could hear an echo of that first crystal, a voice that had called him from his castle into the magical darkness. It was a sound like distant bells, like whispered promises, like the very voice of peace itself, inviting all who would listen to come and discover the gentle gems that waited to transform darkness into light, silence into song, and restless hearts into sanctuaries of profound and eternal tranquility. And with that gentle promise echoing in his heart, Prince Alaric would settle into the blessed peace that only comes to those who have discovered the true treasure of the soul, the knowledge that magic lives, not in distant realms, but in the quiet moments of wonder that surround us always, waiting like glowing gems scattered through the darkness of an ordinary world, ready to transform any life that is open to their gentle, eternal light.